Argentina is going to win the 2026 World Cup. Or to be more precise, Argentina is the team that my model predicts as the most likely of winning the tournament. And I know that this could sound as something that comes from a very biased Argentinian fan, but I'm the complete opposite. I come from Brazil, and despite having supported them in the final of the last World Cup, I am very convinced that they have very good chances of winning this time. However, for this video, I don't want to just predict based on vibes. I want to use math. So what I decided to do was to take 100 years out of international football data, make an ELO-based system out of that, and then simulate the entire 2026 World Cup bracket 1,000 times to see the team that would best survive the tournament. And the answer, at least according to this model, is Argentina. So today, I want to show you how I got there, what the model is doing behind the scenes, where it can be wrong, and why the new 48-team World Cup format makes everything even more interesting this time. Today is June 11th, 2026, the day that the World Cup starts. And I think this is the perfect moment to do this sort of analysis because nobody has any information about the tournament yet and no games have started. So we really don't know what's going to happen. If we were to wait until the first match, a red card could happen or even an injury for a player. So we want to take everything out of the equation and just predict based on purely stats. If we only had the strength of each team and all of these played the World Cup multiple times, who would win most often? Now, as I said before, math is not destiny. It cannot know that there is going to be a last minute goal, such as the one that happened in Brazil against Croatia and that ended up eliminating Brazil in the last World Cup. The first thing that I want you to think about is the difference between a fan model and a data theory. A fan theory sounds something like this. Argentina has recent trophies, Argentina has got a good squad, they also have experience and chemistry, therefore Argentina has good chances of winning. And the main problem with that is that there's no single way of weighing how much chemistry versus experience versus momentum actually impact all of these moments. So what we try to do is to capture all of these different factors into a single number called the ELO and create a system out of it where teams gain and lose ELO points based on when they confront each other. So if you beat an opponent, your rating goes up, and if you lose, of course it goes down. There's also draws in football, so in these cases it also depends on the ELO rating of your opponent, so that even if you draw, your rating might go up or down depending on the strength of the opponent that you drew with. Over time, if you have enough matches, it ends up being a very good way of predicting how good or how strong a team actually is. So instead of us saying, I feel that Argentina is better than another team, we can just take a look at the ratings. Just as an example of how good ELO ratings are at predicting things, there is one video that I watched from this guy who trained AI to predict tennis matches. And just by using the ELO-based system, he was able to achieve an 80% accuracy in his predictions, which is already much better than the 50-50 that we're most often used to. Now, the second thing that we must talk about is the bracket. A normal World Cup bracket is just one prediction that we make. What I mean by this is that you just fill out one of the paths. If your team wins, let's say that you predict that one team will beat the other, and then this same team will go on to move to the next round, and so on and so forth until they eventually reach the finals. But that is just one possible future of the many that could happen. So it ends up missing out on all the other possibilities that would happen if, for example, the other team had won that match. This becomes especially problematic when you have a match where both teams are both almost as strong as each other, because then the probabilities of them winning will go very close to 50% each. And therefore, if you just predict one path, you will end up missing all of the other possibilities where the other team will have won that match. So therefore, the alternative that we come up with is called Monte Carlo, which basically means simulating the same event, in this case the World Cup bracket, multiple times to get the average result or the probability of each one of the teams winning. In my case, I chose to simulate it 1,000 times because I thought this was a good number to demonstrate the experiment that I was trying to make. In reality, when we're doing Monte Carlo simulations, people do millions or even billions of simulations in order to get the best results possible. Now, before going into the code, we need to understand why the 2026 World Cup is special. This edition is the one with the highest number of teams ever. We jumped all the way from 32 to 48 teams. They are all divided into 12 groups of 4 teams each. Each team in each one of these groups plays against all of the other teams in their own group, such that every team has played 3 matches, and then they select the 2 top performing teams of each one of those groups to move on onto the elimination bracket. And now comes the chaotic part. Starting this year, they will select the top 8 third place performance across all of the groups to also select them to move on onto the elimination bracket. And this might change everything. Before, if Germany ended up not performing that well, they might end up getting 3rd place and also happen to be paired against a very strong team in the round of 32, which might flip things completely upside down. This also means that the probability of strong teams actually qualifying is higher. So we won't have that many underdogs now, since we are moving on from a place where even one match would make a total difference to a little bit more stable system. So now let's go under the hood very quickly to understand how things happen. So the first thing that our model does is that it takes the huge data set that we provided and calculates the ELO for each one of the teams teams participating in the tournament. With this, we have one single number that represents the strength of each one of these teams. Then, once two teams are going to play against each other, we look at their ELO ratings to try to have an understanding of the probability of each one of them winning. If the ELO ratings are very close to each other, then the probability of each one of them winning goes closer to 50%. And if they have very different ratings, then the probability of one team winning skyrockets. Moving on from a place where we first always said that the stronger team would win versus actually calculating the probability of each one of these teams winning allows us to have a better gauge at not just who is going to win, at how confident we are that our prediction actually is. After this, our simulation plays all of the group matches. Then the model creates the table in the same way that we would do in the World Cup, by counting the number of points based on the number of draws, wins, or losses, and also the goals conceded, goal scores, and so on and so forth. Now we get into the interesting part, the bracket. This is where our simulation actually allows us to have a better gauge than simply trying to guess that the better team is going to always end up winning. So what we do, as I told you before, is to simulate this 1,000 times to get many brackets and be able to compare them using a single statistic, the probability of each one of these teams winning the World Cup. By the way, if you're interested in learning more about this, Google law of large numbers, and it will explain everything that you need to know. So now let's go to our results. After running the simulation 1,000 times, the country that appeared the most often as the champion of the championship was Argentina. In the end, Argentina won 21.7 of all the tournaments that we simulated. In second place came Spain, which was very close with a probability of winning of 21.2%. Then in third place we had France with 14.5%, and right after that the probabilities of other countries winning shrink significantly. In this case we have places like Portugal, Colombia, Netherlands, England, Brazil, and most of them end up being at the 6% mark. This means that they all have a chance, but still it will depend on some other factors happening. Now the most interesting part about this is that even though Argentina is predicted to be the World Cup champion, it is by a very small margin that they are winning over Spain. For example, if we match them against each other, the probability is something like 49% for one side and 51% for the other. So very close. When we're simulating a World Cup, we're trying to predict who is going to survive after a series of long enduring matches that are going to happen, including extra times, penalty shootouts, and also the confidence and mental health of the players as they keep progressing throughout this tournament. So even if you technically are the favorite to win it, you might still struggle a lot throughout these difficult moments that end up happening. Our model is saying, given the outcomes that we have right now, Argentina is the most likely to make it out. At the same time that the ELO rating used the results from past matches to predict it, I always like to point out that there are generally things that models do not capture, and in the beginning of the video I talked about red cards, injuries, and in the case of Argentina, this is exactly what happened. They have a total of I think 10 players that are somewhat injured before the start of the World Cup, so they will not be playing with their main squad, or at least not in the same way that they were playing in the past World Cup. How much does this change in our predictions? We don't exactly know, but one thing that is important to think about is that we can always construct models to predict how, for example, an injury in a player would impact Argentina or any other team that is playing in the tournament. Even if we are considering different players getting injured having a different impact, we might also construct another model that is able to predict how much having a specific player injured would affect the ELO-based system. So the question that we start asking ourselves is not necessarily if we can build a model to predict something, it is also about balancing the complexity of a model with its predictive power. But after everything that we've covered so far, I want to hear your prediction of who is going to win the World Cup. If possible, try to make your mathematical prediction and tell us if it differs from your actual prediction for the World Cup. Even I decided to pick Brazil still to win the World Cup, despite the winning chances not looking the best. And I am mentioning this to show you that even if you have a model that is able to predict many things, it is still fun to enjoy the unpredictability of life sometimes. If you have any improvements that you think I should add to the model, please feel free to comment them below. I will be very happy to read them, and also feel free to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to support the work that I'm doing here. That's going to be it for now, and I really hope we have an awesome World Cup. It is a very exciting time of the year.